Good evening. My name is Chad Sobieski, and I will be doing my final presentation on the Clean Air Act. And so let's get started here. So the Clean Air Act is a law designed to control and monitor air pollution on a national level. Was the United States' first implemented environmental law and was a stepping stone to many other environmental laws and influenced the creation of more environmental laws. So a little history about the Clean Air Act. It was first in 1955, U.S. First federal legislation on air pollution, and it provided money for research of air pollution. And then in 1963, the United States' first federal legislation on controlling the amount of pollution, and they made a program with the U.S. Public Health Service, which provided research techniques for monitoring and also controlling the amount of air pollution. Then in 1967, which was its second amendment, not the second amendment that allows you to carry a firearm, but the second amendment of the Clean Air Act, which helped to enforce and monitor highway air pollution and transport, and was able to perform ambient air pollution monitoring studies, so it could actually monitor pollution in driving or just idling vehicles. And then we go to 1970, the Clean Air Act extension, and in this one, they expanded state and federal regulations to enforce industrial and mobile sources. They also established the NAAQS, which is the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And they could they were able to authorize the control of vehicle emissions. And then in 1977, they made provisions to the prevention of a significant deterioration of air quality Act, the PSD, and then they also made provisions to non-attainment areas, which are geographical areas that don't meet air quality standards. And then in 1990, the Act was finally amended. So here's a little chart I found that shows the projected health benefits of the Clean Air Act and their programs, which is kind of cool. So in the first column over here, we have how many cases they projected have been prevented since 2010. So adult and infant mortality from chemical particles, showing the prevention numbers there on the other column, and then through how many bronchitis cases, heart disease, asthma, emergency room visits, school lost days, lost work days, and then they have the numbers for how many cases they believe have been prevented all the way through 2020, and it's very, very significant. Just this act, not just this act alone, but with the Clean Air Act and all the other environmental regulations that came following this act. So it's just really cool to see. Okay, so in the industrial facilities, they came out with a leak detection and repair program to where all facilities, like industrial plants, were needed to have a program in place to detect potential leaks. So they created, this was created to monitor and identify potential leaking pollutants in particular facilities, and they identify these leaks through what sounds to me like a sniffer for like an AC leak, and you would just run it around connections and fittings and valves, and it's a vapor analyzer, and it can pick up contaminants, and then they had certain regulations on how much time you had to repair and how long you could have these things down for. Okay, so federal government and state. So although the Clean Air Act is a federal law, states can have their own laws as well. So the Clean Air Act is a federal law that covers the entire United States, but states are allowed to implement their own plans as long as they're approved by the EPA, and as long as they're in compliance with the Clean Air Act. So lots of states actually have their own. Well, I didn't want to go there yet. Okay, well, anyways, lots of states had their own protection acts on top of the Clean Air Act, like California's Clean Air Project is one of the bigger ones. Yeah, so with all their smog testing and everything that they do down there. But Georgia also has their own project. Illinois, New York, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, and even Virginia, they all have their own acts as well to help with pollution. So they're as much as we would hope everybody would follow by the standards of the Clean Air Act, that's not always the case. There have been a few times with a few notable scandals. Hyundai and Kia were both in some trouble a while back, and as well as Caterpillar on their diesel stuff. But the biggest one was obviously Volkswagen and manipulating their emission systems, where their emission systems only operated under U.S. standards while being tested. So they intentionally programmed their turbo diesel injected engines to while being tested to not emit as much NOx as they do when they're actually driving. So when they're actually driving, they're actually emitting 40 times what they show when they're being tested for emissions. So pretty bad, really bad. Doesn't really make me want to ever have anything to do with that company ever after that, and surprisingly never caught by college students, which I always thought was pretty cool. So anyway, so in my opinion, I think the Clean Air Act, obviously, it's just very beneficial to my health. If it wasn't implemented so many years ago, things would be much different now. I'm glad that it's here, so I can live a healthy life and my kids can live a healthier life. I also think it was a huge movement for following environmental laws. Obviously, it was the United States' first environmental law to pass, and that made a big deal and made for another multiple set of laws to come, and such as like the water quality law and the waste management law and contamination cleanup, which are all both really huge things. If we didn't have those in place from years and years back, it's just crazy to think with how populated we are now, what things would be like. So, very good act. And also, my opinion from all this is I will not support Volkswagen, because that was really not cool what they did. They intentionally lied and then tried to blame it on the software glitch once they got caught by some college kids. But anyways, that's just my opinion. I won't be buying any Volkswagens anytime soon. So, alright, well, that's my presentation. Here's my resources. I use the EPA's website, a little article in the New York Times, and some good stuff on Wikipedia there. Alright, well, thanks for your time, and have a good one.